Hello, this is Krystal, and thank you for joining me for this week's First Chapter Friday. Today I will be reading from the beginning of Alex Erickson's Death by Pumpkin Spice. Chapter 1. The pleasing aroma of fresh-baked pumpkin cookies filled the room as I removed the pan from the oven. Halloween was one of my favorite times of the year because that was when the world turned into a pumpkin lover's bliss. I leaned in over the pan and breathed in deep. It was a challenge not to give in to temptation and sample the cookies as I carried them to the front to place within the empty display case. Some have just come up, Lena Allison said from her place at the register. She held up 2 fingers and gave me a relieved smile as I slid 2 cookies into a bag. Death by Coffee had been buzzing since we'd started selling pumpkin items. The cookies were gone almost as fast as I could bake them, and the various coffees were constantly in need of refills. It was running me ragged, but it was worth it. As Lena rang up another order, I finished filling the display case and carried the cooling cookie sheet to the back. I deposited it in the sink where it would need to be washed before I could use it again. Then headed back out front to make a coffee of my own. I filled the cup 3/4 of the way full, added some pumpkin spice flavor in, and then plopped it in one of the recently baked cookies. Ugh! Lena turned up her nose as she leaned against the counter. The line was gone for the moment, giving her a few seconds to breathe. I still don't see how you could drink that. I hate pumpkin. I took a sip and grinned at her over the rim of my cup. Yum. She laughed and shook her head, causing her purple hair to bounce around her ears. Her chin was clear of scrapes, though her elbow had a pretty nasty scab that she'd covered with a pair of band-aids. Her skateboard was parked in the back room, and it looked just as beat up as she often did. Still, I wouldn't trade her in for anyone else. Since Lena started working at Death by Coffee, she'd made my life a whole lot easier. She's a smart girl and friendly to boot. She was saving up to go to college, and I privately hoped she would stick close to home when she did leave. I'd hate to lose her. The bell above the door jangled, and in came Rita Jablonski, bundled in a coat lined with fur I hoped was fake. She was a short woman, on the plump side, and was the biggest gossip in all of Pine Hills. It's getting windy out there, she said, coming straight to where I stood. They're saying we could see some pretty serious storms over the next few days. I glanced out the window, and indeed, the leaves were blowing around as if a tornado were itching to come roaring down out of the cloudy sky. The reds and yellows were beautiful, but I'll admit, I did miss the warm sun and full green in midsummer, though I wasn't a fan of the sometimes oppressive heat. I hope it won't be too bad, I said. If the power went out, there'd be no more cookies or coffee, and that meant no more business. Well, as long as it spends itself before this weekend, I'll be happy. Rita glared out the window, as if the rain could hear her and comply. The church is having our annual trunk or treat, and I, for one, plan on being there, rain or shine. We are participating this year, just like the last, and I won't let a little wet weather ruin it. I narrowed my eyes. We? She looked surprised for a moment before smiling. The book club, of course. We talked about during our last meeting. She paused, and a look of understanding passed over her face. That's right. You weren't there. She leaned forward, pressing against the counter as she spoke. We're holding it at the church on Sunday evening. Cars will be parked in the lot, trunks filled with candy. The kids walk around and trick-or-treat like they normally would. It's safer than going from house to house, and the costumes are a little less... She grimaced. Scary? Disgusting, more like. You can't imagine what some of the teenagers dress up as when left to their own devices. And if you would like to know what happens next, you can check this title out on the Libby app. please join me here next week as I read from the beginning of Agatha Christie's Halloween Party. Thank you and have a great week.